What's up, troops? It's me, the Tactical Brit, and today we have the specialized class video in the squad guide series. Now, there are lots of videos on my squad guides at the moment. They should be available on screen. I know I'm getting pretty repetitive if you've watched a few of these videos now, but feel free to check out all of them in terms of learning fundamentals, squad leading, building. Everything you can think of is available here. But today specifically, we're going to be going over all of the specialized classes and some of the things you should know about the classes in squad. So we're going to start very basically here with the Rifleman class. Now, these are very simplistic. They don't have anything particularly special. Some of them have sights. I'd always go for a sight if you can get one. But I'm going to go over everything they have. They have the basic M4A1 assault rifle with an M68 sight, simple red dot sight. I'm not going to go over all of the guns here, but effectively your standard rifleman comes with grenades, and something you should know about grenades is that there are two ways of throwing them. Step 1, overarm is left click, so you can throw it in distance. Underarm is right click, and you can throw it and lob it. Underarm is especially useful for throwing it over walls, something I highly recommend. If you're up close next to a wall, don't overarm it, just simply get up close and personal and lob it. You have smoke grenades, which disperse over time. Of course, it's the same principle. Overarm for distance, underarm if you want to get up close and personal, just roll it along. And that can be incredibly useful in combat situations, especially with medics or even just blindsiding opponents. You have the shovel, you have some sandbags, and you have razor wire, which all do what they say on the tin, as well as some field dressings to bandage yourself if you should get injured. So obviously if you take damage, you right click to apply the bandage to yourself, you left click it to apply it to other people who may be out of bandages. Now, that's as simple as that. I'm not going to go over all the basic rifleman classes and all the different ones. Of course, insurgents have AK-47s and AK-74Ms and all sorts. But yeah, I'm going to go over some of the more complex stuff. This is something I think is worth mentioning, and that is the M4 with the M150 sight, which is what most of you will know as an ACOG sight. Just something very basic and fundamental to note about this specialized, more optic class is that when you're aiming with an ACOG, you should always aim for the tip of the chevron. A lot of people don't know this, but that little triangle in the middle, the very tip of that is more or less where your bullet should go. That's what you should be aiming for in terms of direction. It can be a bit confusing sometimes when you're looking at, a triangular object to get a gauge of where your bullet is actually going, but I can assure you that the tip of the chevron is more or less where your bullet is heading. Moving on, we have the M249 Pip with the M68 sight. Now, this is very simplistic. This is a light machine gun. It's effectively used for suppression. It's also used to take on enemies and absolutely mow them down. But worth noticing here is that firing this thing in automatic or standing upright can be a hell of a nightmare in terms of recoil compensation. So crouching down or proning or using the bipod available by pressing C is how you become a laser beam at all ranges. As you can see there, you can mow down infantry a hell of a long way when bipoded up. Crouching and proning gives you more stability without a bipod, but of course if you are prone, you may as well throw up a bipod anyway. Moving on, we have the riflemen that are completely done. We're going to head on over to the more complex fire support roles. The automatic rifleman you just saw in action. We're going to head on over to... well, we could do the machine gunner. It's just an M240B. Of course, like I say, other classes will have other different LMGs and machine gun variants. It's effectively the same principle. Use your damn bipod and you'll be good. But moving on to fire support, we have the Grenadier. This is actually a pretty important class. It has recently received some nerfs, but you know what? That's not really that important. The Grenadier comes, of course, with an M203 explosive grenade launcher. This will allow you to load a grenade launcher shell, fire it, and hopefully cause some havoc if you hit your targets. This is something that can, of course, be used at all different kinds of ranges, and it's something that also is available in smoke grenade formats. But more specifically, something you should know about the grenade launcher is that if you are far too close to your target, the grenade launcher will not explode. Only at significantly far ranges, I'd say of about 10 meters plus, will you actually get the grenade launcher shell to explode, as I managed to wonderfully demonstrate there whilst injuring myself. But if it's literally like a meter away from you and you fire that thing, the grenade shell will just bounce into the ground. You won't get an explosion. And realistically, if you're firing it that close, you have a death sentence on your hands. Worth noticing as well is range distance are also something available here with your grenade launcher. You could actually scroll the zeroing range, so if you have an approximate distance, for example, we know that's about 100 meters away. So if I now aim for the tip of this, That should hopefully land more or less on target. Yeah, that's more or less pinpoint. If you aim for the tip of your iron sight, and then you have the zeroing range correct, you should more or less make accurate shots as long as you're aiming down your sight. We have about 200 meters there, and that should hopefully land in and around that region. A little bit over that time. It's not always perfect. The grenade launcher shells do, of course, have deviation on them when they're in the air. And the actual insurgent classes as well, worth mentioning, is that some of the AK-74 or AK-47 variants of the grenade launcher class actually have the ability to go high. So you can actually aim the grenade launcher more or less vertically. It'll be called 100 meters high or 200 meters high, and you can use the grenade launcher effectively like a mortar. So if you keep scrolling up with the grenade launcher zeroing on some of the insurgent weapons, you'll actually be able to use it as effectively a mortar. The travel time in the air is a lot longer. It's about 10-15 seconds, but it will eventually fly straight up, and then of course if it's 100 meters high, it will land 100 meters away, 200 meters away, etc, etc. One thing I want to mention as well, actually, before I swap out this class, is the smoke grenades are incredibly underrated. I highly recommend using blue and red smoke to hit your targets and tell people where people are. Sometimes I like to relay to my squad leaders and squad mates by hitting a building with a blue smoke or red smoke that blue or red smoke indicates enemies in that location. Or if it's a vehicle, I like to tell them there is a vehicle in that region that I have now marked with blue smoke or red smoke. Smoke colors are specific to teams, so if you're on the US, you'll have certain smoke colors. If you're on the Russians, insurgents, you'll have different smoke colors. The only one that's more or less universal is white smoke. So yeah, calling out color coordinated smoke is actually pretty important as a Grenadier. So make sure you do that whenever you get the opportunity. Okay, if it lets me reload my classes, I'm going to try this little ammo box. Maybe I've depleted that one. There we go. Right. So if I head on over to a new fire support role, we've done the Grenadier. We're going to have a look at the Marksman. This is something that's becoming more and more frequent in squad. People want their designated Marksman rifles. We have the M110 SAS. I like to call it the Sassy. I know it sounds trash, but you know what? I'm going to call it that because I can. And effectively, this is DMR. This isn't really what you would call technically a sniper rifle. It doesn't come with a bipod. It's more of an on-the-go designated marksman rifle, more of a sort of hybrid, kind of like the DMRs available in Battlefield 1. Not Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4. You'll be familiar with it. Effectively, it's pretty simple. Scope down, you've got this lovely little sight here. Of course, you can free look, but the free look maintains the blur, so obviously keep it on the scope itself. Free looking is actually a fundamental of more or less all classes, so you know, make sure you're doing that. But the only thing worth noticing here on this this class here is the zeroing range. Again, much like the grenade launcher, the reticle will be more or less bang on target, provided you've got the zeroing range correct. If I did 100 meters of that range and I aim at that, it'll probably fall a little bit short, as you can see there. It hasn't actually hit the target itself. 200 meters, however, completely on target. So make sure you keep adjusting your zeroing ranges. This goes up to 1,000 meters. I really don't recommend making that kind of shot, if I'm honest. 1,000 meters is hella far, even for a sight of this variety. I mean, we got, what, 1,000 meters is all the way over there? I can try and hit that. I really don't think it's going to happen, though. Close. Close-ish. You can see a bit of a bullet splash, but yeah, not something I recommend. I'd probably say keep the marksman rifle in and around to 500 meters. That's the longest I've ever been able to pull off successful shots. Some of you that are a bit more privy there with rifles could perhaps perform a better job, but it's a very limited weapon. It's only a designated marksman rifle. The insurgent and terrorist sort of variants of that are more or less the same as well. Now, moving on to the anti-tank. This is something I'm going to need some vehicles for. This is effectively the same as the other classes, except it comes with, of course, anti-tank rounds. You also have a zeroing range on this, so of course where your reticle is where you will fire. But for the sake of simplicity, we will go up to one of these little vehicles here, and we're going to hit the boomstick on it. Now, one hit on most vehicles will give it some smoke or will set it on fire. 2 hits will usually destroy it, maybe 3. It depends on the vehicle you're using. But fundamentally, the anti-tank is literally just a launcher. It has explosive damage. If you're on the insurgent side, this is probably worth showing off. So if I quickly switch team here, the insurgent side actually has a slightly different Oh, you can see my little dead body. Oh, that looks thoroughly devastating. The insurgent side fire support role actually has the anti-tank RPG rounds as well. So this is broken down into anti-tank, high explosive, and fragmentation. Fragmentation is an anti-infantry round, so use this against infantry. You can see based on the smaller rocket tip there. So this is actually designed to take on infantry and kill them. Of course, it has its zeroing ranges as well. Whereas the anti-tank high explosive is what you should be using. You can see it's a slightly bigger rocket. That's what you should be using for vehicles on this class. So you can see again, find one of these bad boys, and kaboom. The RPG is a very effective weapon. Anti-vehicle in general in this game is incredibly important. It's something you're going to want to get privy with. Most people will ask you at some point in this game to use an anti-tank class because they're just simply that important. Another one worth mentioning as well is a slightly newer addition to this. It's the heavy anti-tank. We have the anti-tank rounds, fragmentation, and the high explosive and heavy anti-tank round. So this is effectively the same principle as the AT. You get 2 AT rounds like you would with the normal anti-tank, but you also get this heavy tandem rocket as well. And this is effectively your one-hit wonder. This thing can absolutely demolish vehicles. It's a really heavy hitter, but it has a significant level of drop on it. Now, you can see there, it does damage pretty quickly. But if I just show you guys something more or less pretty important here, this thing has a hell of a lot of dip on it. Like, you really have to aim up and high if you want to hit something. I'm going to try and hit this thing that's about 100 meters away. Aimed a little bit too high there, but you can see that had a hell of an arc on it. This thing is something that you need to be careful with. Of course, this is good goods as well, man. Like, this thing can take out a single vehicle in one hit. So, you know, it's worth knowing. Heading back to these basic classes as well, there's also some other stuff you need to know because we've got the Scout class, which is only really available with Insurgents and the sort of terrorist militia-based classes. But this comes with an SKS, which has zeroing ranges as well, but it's a basic iron sight. This is a tap-fire weapon, semi-automatic, simple SKS. Many of you will be privy with an SKS rifle by this point. Lots of games have it. But it comes with some other special things as well, including an IED, an anti-tank mine, a grenade, and some rocks, and even some binoculars. So the IED is effectively what it says on the tin. This can be used against vehicles and people. I highly recommend people because it's very effective and has a huge explosive radius. You hold the placement button by clicking on the left mouse button. As you can see, the IED is now on the ground. You then head to your cell phone detonator, and I strongly recommend you get out of dodge before you pull the trigger on this bad boy, because that's a big boom. And believe me, you can see IEDs and hear them explode across the map. They leave that much damage. You also have the anti-tank mine, and this is something that's actually pretty cool. So you place the anti-tank mine on the ground by holding the button. Okay, that has decided to randomly switch to a grenade, so we're just going to toss that over. But yeah, you effectively just place it on the ground by holding down the left click button, and it will prime the anti-tank mine and put it on the ground. And then you get out your shovel, and then you dig it. And you can actually dig the anti-tank mine into the ground, so only a small part of it is exposed to the outside. And this makes it much harder to spot for oncoming vehicles. The only thing left is this little red plate. You can then whip out your decoy rocks, and then, with a little bit of luck, place them in and around your anti-tank mine and make it even more inconspicuous. I highly recommend not doing anything stupid by like placing them all in a circle around this thing. Litter them around the area a little bit to make it look a little less obvious. Make it look more like part of the map as opposed to something that shouldn't be there. If you can, try and hide the red plate by going through different levels of sights. So people who are walking down the road, if they see these rocks, they think, they're just normal rocks. There's no anti-tank mine anywhere there. And then, obviously, a vehicle drives over this, and kaboom. But one thing worth mentioning about this anti-tank mine is that your friendly vehicles can be destroyed by this. Now, if I run away here, you should see a skull and crossbones relayed to your entire team. that you have placed an AT mine down. Otherwise, I guarantee you, some sorry bastard in the middle of nowhere is going to drive over this thing, and it will be a friendly. It will be a friendly. It'll be an important thing like a transport truck or a supply truck that you desperately need. He's going to drive over the thing, and he's going to get you all murdered. He's going to destroy everything, and it's going to be awful. Honestly, just whenever you drop an anti-tank mine, tell the world about it. This is, of course, the other Marksman class on the militia side, which has a slightly shittier sight. And then the last thing I'm going to go over is, of course, the 100 meter high variation on this grenade launcher. So the AK has the ability to aim down sight, hold X, and you can see we've got 100, 300 meters high, 200 meters high. So if I aim down sight at something that's around about 200 meters away, and I fire this bad boy, that should land somewhere within the range of 200 meters away, and it's somewhere in the sky, and it will land after about 10-15 seconds in and around that region. You'll hear a splash in a bit. There we go. That explosion ended up being somewhere around there. Like I say, this is a highly inaccurate method of shooting. This is effectively like dumb firing a mortar on the go. It's not supposed to be particularly good. It will kill friendlies if you're not careful. It's not super precise. It has deviation in the air, but it is your on-the-go mortar, which I think is pretty cool to have. You can see them landing at around about 200 meters in range, 150 meters in around there. And yeah, they'll just keep dipping and keep diving and land all around the place and hopefully kill some targets. But like I say, that deviation can be pretty killer. The only other classes really now to go over are more basic ones. So we've got the medic, actually, which is pretty important. So I will go over to the medic here. Now, the medic is a very important class. It's a fundamental to squad. If you do not have 2 medics on your squad, make it so that you have 2 medics on your squad. And I'm going to injure myself for the purposes of this video. By doing that, we're going to lob a little grenade over there. I'm going to try and get relatively close to the blast radius. Right, so we have bandages. Step 1. Right-click a bandage to apply it to yourself. This will allow you to heal yourself up and stop you bleeding, as you can see by the pulsating on your screen. Left-clicking a bandage will allow you to apply it to other people. Should you see people who are injured in the area, you simply hit left-click on them, you hold that down until they are completely bandaged, and then you switch to your medical kit. Right-clicking your medical kit will apply it to yourself, and there will be a green health indicator on screen. There isn't at the moment, but in-game there will be. That will tell you whether you're close to full life or not on full life. Left-clicking the medical bag when you see an injured opponent, or injured friendly even, would be, you don't really want to revive bad guys, but yeah, if you see an injured teammate, they will have a health indicator on them. Run up to them after you've bandaged them. You have to have bandaged them first, and then left-click, and that will allow you to redeem their health. And yeah, that's about it for all of the roles available in-game. You've got everything available on screen here: automatic riflemans, anti-tank, grenadiers, medics. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comment section below. But that's effectively everything available in those classes. And like I say, check out the combat video from my squad guide series if you're interested in engagements, and the advanced tactics video, which should be available on the screen now. And that will give you a good idea of some of the more sophisticated things you can do with these weapons and pieces of equipment that you've been given. So guys, that's about it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another video.